Well, thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it. And good morning to everyone in the Southwest of the United States. I'm actually coming to you from up in the Northeast in Boston, so about as far away in the United States as you can get, I guess. But today we're here to look at how you can increase your power and productivity of your Revit implementation with Ideate Software Solutions. So I'm going to give you a quick whirlwind tour of Ideate BIMLink, Ideate Explorer, Ideate Sticky, and our newest IdeateApps. And all these solutions are available from CADsoft Consulting. So just real quickly, a little bit about me. I have a background in architecture and over 17 years of experience. I was fortunate enough to be one of the original employees at Revit Technology before the Autodesk acquisition back in 2002. Then I worked at Autodesk for a number of years, but I've also worked in both large and small architecture firms along the way. You can always contact me for additional questions at richard.taylor@ideateinc.com, and you can follow me at Twitter at rwtaylor_Revit. So just a quick introduction on Ideate Software. We are a premier developer since 2008. Actually, that was the first year that Autodesk released the API for Revit. And we focus only on Revit solutions. So that's our speciality. We're not building applications for Navisworks or for AutoCAD. We're totally focused on Revit workflows and improving your productivity in Revit. And we're really known for our extensive help and online support. We have customers in over 50 countries around the world. So not just the Southwest United States, but everywhere there's Revit, I say, there is the need for Ideate software. And one thing that's unique about us is when we introduce a new feature or let's say new enhancement to one of our solutions, we're updating the last 3 releases of Revit, or our solutions on Revit, I should say. So right now we are offering our solutions that you're going to see today on Revit 2016, 2017, and 2018. And so they're going to be pretty much identical. There's always a little variances sometimes depending upon the Revit API of what can and can't be offered with a particular Revit platform. But by and large, they're going to be the same across those latest 3. And so when eventually another release of Autodesk comes out, or Autodesk Revit, we'll be on that, and then we'll be providing the last 3 release support. And we actually have versions that go back further than the 16 release of Revit. So we have solutions on Revit 2014 and 2015, but we're not making updates to those. Those are sort of static right now. But certainly if that's something that's of interest to you, that's something that you can still continue to purchase, and we continue to have those available for our customers. Okay, so today we've got a very short period of time to go over a lot of information. So the reason that you're here is to learn about Ideate software and to learn about how these solutions can help you with your BIM workflow. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about IdeateApps, our one product, another product, Ideate BIMLink, Ideate Explorer, and Ideate Sticky. And as Mary said, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the question window, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Now, all of these 4 products or 4 solutions for Revit, we've looked at the workflows for Revit, and Revit's an excellent product. We think very highly of it, but it doesn't solve every person's workflow needs, or doesn't solve every sort of scenario. So we looked at where there were workflow gaps, and that's where we've inserted our Ideate software solutions. So I'm going to start out when I kind of talk about each one of these 4 applications as to the problem that we're trying to address. So the first one I'm going to start out with is called IdeateApps. And I start out, hey, this is our latest. We actually introduced it just last August with 4 applications that are part of IdeateApps, our 4 solutions. And now we've added another 4, so there's a total of 8, you can call them applications or tools, if you will, that are encapsulated with IdeateApps. So when you purchase IdeateApps, you get these 8 solutions that are part of the overall product. And so the workflow needs that we're trying to address here is, people have the need to quickly find items in Revit, and the project browser is not always the best tool for quickly finding and searching and understanding the elements of the Revit project. So that's one thing we're going to be looking at. The idea of having to renumber a series of rooms or doors very easily, that's a big problem. And then objects or elements in Revit that have gotten deleted and you're not quite sure where or why they got deleted. That's obviously another big kind of workflow gap. And then the visibility of elements. Why doesn't an element display in a specific Revit view? That's a real problem that users have come to us and asked about, like, can you help us with that? And then, quality control for spelling is a big issue. And then also this whole kind of scenario of laying out views on sheets and duplicating sheets and keeping things aligned was another big problem. So all of these problems are solved with our solution called IdeateApps. And so, as I said, IdeateApps is a little bit unique because it actually contains 8 sub-applications or tools, if you will, that make up the IdeateApps solution. So those tools are called Ideate Quick Select, Smart Delete, X-Ray, ReNumber, Spell Check, Sheet Manager, Align, and Clone. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly and describe each of these applications in a little bit more detail. So the first one is called Ideate Quick Select. And really, each time we're trying to look at, well, who is it for and why would you use it and why is it important to you? So it's really for every user. It allows you to basically quickly search and find things very easily because the project browser in Revit is just showing you some things that might be in the model. For instance, you may load families and they show in the project browser, but those families may not be used in the project. Ideate Quick Select is a model browser. It's showing you every instance of every element within the project. So what I'm going to do is switch over here to Revit. Today I'm using Revit 2018.1, which is the latest release of Revit from Autodesk. But as I said, we have these same solutions on Revit 2016 and Revit 2017. So once you install any one of our products, you're very familiar here with the current ribbon tabs within Revit, but we now have a separate tab called Ideate Software, where then our applications, as you see here, BIMLink, Explorer, Sticky, and then all of these kind of orange are part of the IdeateApps solutions. So as I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to do is look at Quick Select. Quick Select is a model browser. So the first thing I want you to notice is that it's scanning the entire project and it's giving me a total of 36,830 elements. So as I said, it's showing me every single element, and it's got this great tree structure that's showing me all of the categories. And I can quickly search for items. For instance, if I want to type in the word concrete, hit the little binoculars, and it's showing me then just items that match that concrete. So for instance, if I want to go to the text notes here, I can now expand on that. I can go down to the notes here and I can say, oh, where was those concrete pavers? And I can simply double click and I go directly to that. If I highlight that, then it highlights that piece of text where I can make modifications or changes to it. And speaking of that, if I deselect all of these, and let's go back here to my detail items, my filled regions, I'm still looking for concrete, and maybe I come down here to the filled region, I've got this concrete, I'm just going to double click on this particular instance and highlight it so you see that it's there in the canvas area. Once I select on this or any multiple items, now I can choose, let's say, a different concrete pattern. Maybe I want that to be concrete pattern 4. And now it's changed. And in fact, in my list here, now I've got concrete 4 under my filled regions. So Quick Select is a way for me to quickly identify items in the model, search for them, but also be able to change things if I need to. And what's really nice about this is that it's showing me items that are both visible and not visible. So if I'm going to clear the selection here again, notice it's also showing me things like CAD imports, things that the project browser just doesn't show in Revit. So if I come over here to CAD imports, and let's come down here to the door details, and like the first door detail I click on is in a drafting view, opens up the drafting view, looks great. The second one, if I double click, it's giving me this message, and it says, hey, the element is hidden. What would you like to do? Would you like to temporarily turn on reveal hidden elements? And I say, yes, I would. And so what it does is it opens up that view, it turns on the reveal hidden element mode in Revit, and I can see that, okay, this maybe was a mistake, right? So now I can click on that CAD file, and then I can remove it from this view, turn off reveal hidden element mode, and now let's fit the view. And I know that I have a clean view that doesn't contain any CAD files, or let's say, DWG imports in this particular case. So again, it's a great way for me to quickly identify and find things, even those items that may not be visible within the Revit project. So that's Quick Select. The next is called Ideate Smart Delete. And the issue here was things get deleted and you're not quite sure why, in the sense of someone will say, well, I didn't delete that keynote, I never even touched it. But the reason being that that keynote may have gotten deleted is because there are relationships in Revit that you may not understand or be aware of, right? So I'm going to show you an example of that. If we come back over to the Revit 2018 here, I've got, and we're now going to go on to the we just did Quick Select, Smart Delete. So I've got a situation here, and I'm going to come down here to my floor slab, and I'm going to show you the Revit way first, right? So here's a floor in Revit, and I'm going to, tab to that floor, it highlights, and I'm just going to go over here and hit delete. All right, so that's the Revit way. It just deletes it, there's no problem, you feel like it's okay. But in fact, that floor slab got deleted, in all those different views. So I'm going to come over here and now do, let's say, undo, right? Let's bring that floor slab back. And let's come over and select on the floor slab again, and now go to our Ideate software and select on Smart Delete. And so it's going to tell me that, hey, this floor that you're planning to delete actually has dimensions associated with it, edit cut profile regions, and keynote tags. And in fact, this keynote tag, you can double click, it's going to open up the view that contains that keynote tag, and then you can actually double click again to zoom in, and you can see that, oh, okay, well, why did someone basically select a keynote tag to this floor slab is because they needed to attach it to something. That's the way the keynotes work, and probably the closest thing was just this floor slab, and they did it, and you don't even realize that that is now connected. So that when the floor slab gets deleted, that projection screen keynote is going to get deleted as well as these other dimensions that may appear in different views. Another way to use this tool is, let's go ahead and clear the selection again. And I can just, like in the canvas with Revit, right, select a bunch of items and come over here now to the Smart Delete tool. And when I select multiple items, it's going to scan through and it's going to sort of classify those that have dependents and those that don't have dependents. So everything that's bolded text has a dependent. So for instance, these rooms probably have room tags, obviously, in many different locations. So there's there's room tags in all these different views, and you go and if see the element is hidden in that view. So I can open up the view and see the hidden element of the tag. It was sort of randomly me selecting on that, so that it was hidden in that particular view. So let's go ahead and go back over here, and let's say I want to say, all right, let's go back to these rooms, and let's go and select now my casework. I'm going to uncheck that, my curtain wall grids, my mullions, my doors, my generic models, my groups, plumbing fixtures, roofs. So all those things that basically have dependents, right? And so now that I've selected all those, I can refresh the screen here. And so now you can see that, okay, I forgot one there, there's walls. Let's do that refresh again. It says good news. So it says, actually you didn't find, or there are all of these 34 items that I've selected, none of them have and any dependents associated with them. So if I do delete these 34 items, I'm ensured that that's okay. I'm not deleting other items that may be connected to that. So it's a great tool for me to just simply review the information. I may or may not choose to delete the items once I've completed with Ideate Smart Delete. So let's go ahead and I'll just close that view. And we'll get back to my, my starting view there. Okay, so that's Ideate Smart Delete. Again, it's for all users, and it's because you're not always aware of all these relationships within Revit. Our next tool within our IdeateApps has gotten a lot of great feedback, and it's called X-Ray. And again, it's for all users, and it allows you to understand why something may or may not be invisible in a particular view. So, you know, most of the time you kind of run to the BIM manager or maybe run to a more senior person and you say, why isn't this displaying? Or I can't figure out why my sprinklers aren't showing up in this floor plan view. So now you can use these tools. You don't always have to run to the BIM manager or to a senior Revit person or project manager maybe to find out why that's not displaying. So let's switch back over here to Revit again. And you know what I'm going to do is going to go to my views here. And I'm going to close my hidden, and I'm going to reduce this down for a moment, and we're going to switch over to a different file here, and this one is an MEP file. I'm just kind of switching it up here, showing some architectural examples and some MEP examples as well. So let's go over here to this view, and I've been tasked with placing a sprinkler in this view. So we're going to go over to my systems, and we'll say, you know, here's a sprinkler, let's place that. And I get this warning message. And every time that I am in person or in an office and I ask people to raise their hands if they've seen this warning before, you know, 100% of the people always raise their hand and say, yes, I'm familiar with this. You know, what does that mean? It just says I placed something, but it's not visible. So now I want to figure out, well, why? So now I can come over here to my Ideate software, go to my X-ray, and the hardest thing about sort of understanding why something doesn't display is being able to pick that item. And if the item's not displaying, how do you pick it? So we give you this great wizard allowing you to sort of select items by multiple methods. And I'm going to show you a couple examples here. So the first example is probably the easiest, just searching a small area in the target view. So I think it's a 3D object, that's what I'm looking for, because a sprinkler is a 3D element. And so I just say next. And I'm going to select by crossing, and I say somewhere in here should be some sprinklers. And sure enough, here they are. So I can check on the sprinkler, say next, and now say to X-ray, find the element. And it's going to go over through 50 or over 50 checks to understand why this isn't displaying. Now, in this particular case, this is a super simple example. It's hidden by category. But I always start out really simple, and then we'll kind of get to a couple more, I'd say, more complicated scenarios. But this is a good way to show that, okay, it's hidden by category. Let's say you're a brand new Revit user and you don't quite understand what that means. Well, the more info goes to the help. So we have extensive help on all of our topics. And you'll see not just, you know, X-ray, but you'll see here ReNumber and Quick Select and Smart Delete. So I can kind of scroll through and understand, well, what does this mean by category? What I can also do is say, show me. It actually brings up the visibility graphics dialog. I can come down here to sprinklers, right? That would be S, and I can actually just turn it on here. Or, you know, if I don't want to rely on the visibility graphics dialog, I can just say fix, and I won't zoom in. But then what it does is it turns on that category in this view. So that was a real simple example, like I said, of being able to understand. Now let's get a little bit more detail. So here's an item where we're missing a pump, and it's not hidden by category, and maybe we've tried a couple of the reveal hidden elements and still doesn't work. So why isn't it not displaying? So again, we're going to go to X-ray. This time, I know that it was something I placed in here fairly recently. So I'm going to pick from a list of currently created elements. I'm going to say next, and sure enough, you know, if I look at category, I can actually sort by family name, sort by name, sort by element ID, sort by this category. I can come down here to the heat pump and say, oh, that's what I'm looking for. Find out why it's not displaying in this view. So X-ray comes back and it says, hey, it's because of the phase. You know, the phase was set to the element, it's actually set to future, but the actual phase is that, you know, the view phase, I should say, I'm sorry, is set to like new construction. So if you want to know more info, again, it's going to say, well, you know, you could either change the elements phase, that's a property on the element, or you could change the views phase. So that's why we don't give you this easy fix, because we don't know, you know, whether you want to fix the view phase or whether you want to fix the element phase. So in this case, the easiest thing for me to do right here is click on the view. Let's come down to phase filter instead of show all, actually new construction. I'm just going to go to the future phase, and then you can see that the heat pump displays. Another great example of this is if you go to the view discipline, and you know, why isn't this section marker displaying? Well, here, again, using my wizard for X-ray, that's a little bit different because it's actually a grid, level, or view reference. You know, call out is a view reference, so is a section marker. So I want to pick from a list. So it goes through and it shows me all of the view references in this view. Well, that may be kind of hard for me to scroll through, so what I can do is just type in the word section here by my keyboard. Let's see. I've been having some issues with this keyboard here with my new laptop. Let's see. Well, in the essence of time, I will go down here, instead of, I'm going to do the section 3 and just find that view here. So I selected that and say next, and now we're going to go here and find the element. And so what it does is it comes up and it says, hey, this is based on the view reference, the discipline, so that the actual marker itself is set to mechanical, but the view discipline, or I should say the section element, yeah, is set to mechanical, but the X-ray view is set to structural. So they need to match. And again, if I want more info, I can scroll through and understand why that may or may not be what I want to select. So in this case, I say, okay, great, done. I'm going to go and say, you know what, let's turn on my temporary view properties here. And we're just going to go over and change the identity data here, or I should say the view information. So let's come down here to the discipline. Instead of structural, we want to change it to mechanical, and we want to apply. And sure enough, that is now showing. If that was a mistake, I can now click on the actual object, which is this mechanical, you know, view section, and I'm going to change it from mechanical back to structural. Right? And because I did that as in a temporary view, I'm going to restore the view properties. And so now I have a structural view with the marker set for structural, and so they're displaying properly. So again, there's lots of different ways that you can use Ideate X-ray to figure out whether things are displaying or not displaying because of a phase, maybe a crop region, an annotation crop, maybe you know, a scope box, for instance. You know, so again, there's over 50 different ways that we check. So let's go over here and switch back to my PowerPoint. And so you see here, what we've done is we've given you this selection wizard that allows you to easily find elements that may not be visible in a particular view. So our first version of Ideate X-ray actually didn't have this wizard, and so it's kind of hard to select elements, but now we're giving you this great wizard that has lots of different selections for whether you're looking for a 3D element or 2D element or a grid, level, or view reference. And then of course we have extensive help explaining why something may or may not display and how you might fix it using the tools in Revit. Okay, next, our next solution is called Ideate ReNumber. Again, it's still part of IdeateApps, and this allows any user to quickly renumber an item, you know, whether it be, let's say, maybe a light fixture or maybe a door mark or even a room number. So let's show some examples of that. If we come over here and say lighting here, we're going to zoom up here, and I've got this multi-purpose space, and I'm going to click on this, and we're going to change the to 567. And now I'm just going to go over here and select on my ReNumber tool. And the ReNumber tool is contextual. It's giving you rules that only apply to elements that are in the view. So right now, I only have space names and numbers. I have lighting and grid, so I'm going to select lighting, and I can just simply select the element. And what I've done is I've chosen this little rule that says, okay, take the space name or space number, and then increment it by A, B, C, D, and also show a circuit number. So I can say start numbering. There's number 1, there's number 2, there's number 3, and I can just keep going, which is nice. But then an easier way to do that is maybe actually select a path by crossing, where you can pick on an existing line, or as you see here, you can create a new path. So if I say start numbering, I'm going to first do the pick on an existing line. And then you can see here, anywhere where that line crossed over a lighting fixture, it's going to renumber that. In fact, this one doesn't have a circuit number, so maybe I can just ignore that element. I can also reverse the order and say accept the changes. So here I start with K and then go down to J and so forth. Now let's go here and to my view. We're going to close my hidden windows, and we're going to switch back to that original file that I had, which was the architectural example. We're going to come over here to my renumbering. And I want to show you how you might want to do this on the fly as well. So if I wanted to renumber these rooms as an example, that are the 100 series rooms, right? I'm going to go over here to ReNumber, and we'll select on my door rules, or actually I'm just going to start with rooms, I'm sorry, rooms. And we're going to do, let's say, room number 500s. We'll backspace there. Say, now we're going to create a path. So this is the difference. I don't have one already created, so I do this little check mark that says create path. And I say, we're going to select path by crossing and start numbering. So I'm going to start in the vestibule, come over here to the theme classroom, come over here to this other theme classroom, zoom up here to the multi-purpose space, go to the concession store, and then maybe end there. I'll hit the escape key. So now what it does is it shows me the original room numbers, the 100s, and the new room values, the 500s, right? And so I can say accept those changes. And then once I did the rooms, I can now renumber the doors. And I can do the doors either by a path, or in this case, I can do it by numbering by view, and I can say start numbering. And now it's going to basically renumber the doors, but I have the option here to actually pull information from the from room value, or in the database, I can switch the from room and to room values. And so at any particular time, as you see here, like in these cases, I can ignore the elements. If I actually do multiple selection here, I can say ignore those as an example. So I have the option to kind of go through and then accept the changes. So now there was probably some duplicate mark values, that's okay. Let's zoom up here and you see that, okay, this was 500, this was door 500, this was 506A, this was corridor 501, 502 was the door number. And again, depending upon, since this was lobby 506, this was 506A, depending on whether it was the from room or to room values. So really easy and flexible to be able to renumber these items. All right, and so this is kind of a wordy slide, but it has a lot of information as far as what Ideate is allowed, or Ideate ReNumber allows you to do. You can customize the rule, and you can pull data from other parameters, for instance, other text-based parameters, and push that information into like maybe mark values or other values that most likely it's probably a mark or a tag value. And we can pull information across the linked file. You can customize these rules and save them in a sort of a centralized location that could be used for multiple projects. All right, our next tool is called Ideate Spell Check, and I think this is kind of self-explanatory. It's like, in the sense, we need to create quality documents going out the door, and how do we do that? Well, Revit has a spell check tool, but it only checks one view at a time. Our spell check tool checks all, or gives you the possibility of checking all open sheets and views, as you see here, checking all information within a sheet list, like all sheets, or checking just schedules. And that's a really key factor, is we're checking text in schedules, and the Revit spell check tool doesn't do that at all. So if I say, well, let's just look at schedules, I want to go through here, and it's going to scan through information. And just like with many text spell check engines, I can add to items, I can ignore the items. So I might want to say ignore a corridor, ignore maintenance. These are just sort of abbreviations, right? Which are, let's say, okay and fine. Or I could add them to the dictionary if I so desire. But it's going to come up here with, I think, one more. I've got a schedule. It should be, yeah, there it is. So there's schedule that's been misplaced, or misspelled, excuse me. So what I want to do is I want to change this, and I can change all locations. And once I do that change, I can keep going or I can stop, and it gives you a nice little summary here. It basically said that it checked 7 out of 9 schedules, it checked 2,389 elements, and it made 1 modification. So I can send that out to report, or I can keep going. But it's a great way for me to ensure, again, the quality by being able to check not only the views, but the schedules as well. All right, down to the last sort of pieces of IdeateApps is all about all about sheet creation and duplication of the sheets. So with the project browser, you're not allowed to sort of duplicate a sheet view. It's that information is grayed out. So the sheet manager and our Ideate clone and Ideate align allow you to create new sheets or duplicate sheets, and also keep the views on them aligned. And so I'm going to show you some examples of that. So if I come back over here to Revit, just so that you know, if I come back over here to my sheets, let's say my elevations, and I say, whoops, let's go down here to a sheet. And I say duplicate view. Notice that the duplicate with detailing, duplicate as a dependent, those are all grayed out. So I can't copy sheets just using the Revit command. So coming back over here to Ideate Software, I'm going to select on my sheet manager. And once I open up Sheet Manager, it's going to show me the available views on the left and the sheets on the right. And notice not only does it show me available views, if I uncheck this, it's showing me all the views like the project browser would show. But if I say hide those that have already been placed, it's now showing me just those views that haven't been placed on a sheet. So I'm going to create a new sheet here. I can do that right from the dialog. And so what it does is it basically kind of takes the same parameters of the last sheet I created. So there it is. It doesn't have any views on that sheet. So if I want to take this parking plan, I can drag and drop this from the left side to the right side and say I want to place it on this sheet Z.7. And not only do I want to take that parking plan, but I want to go over here to my legend views, let's say. I'm going to expand on this. Or maybe actually let's do key schedules. Let's do doors. I've got a door hardware schedule. I'm going to drag and drop that over to the view here. Let's do that. There we go. So notice that as I'm dragging and dropping these things, they're appearing on the list. And then I can also expand on this other sheet that's in the list here. And if I scroll down on that, let's expand that and scroll down. Notice that those are elevations, right? They already exist on this sheet. I can transfer these elevations from one to another. So I'm going to click on this storefront elevation and again drag it up here to this Z.7 sheet. So what I've done there is basically, dragged a couple views that have not been placed and one of the views that was placed on a different sheet. So I'm able to sort of manipulate that. Now, if I move this off to the side here, you can see what I've done, and I can now kind of organize those sheets, or I'm sorry, those views where I want. So I'm going to place that parking plan there. We'll place the schedule down over to the lower left, and then this is one of those elevation views. So now I go ahead and say zoom to fit. So like, what if I wanted to duplicate this sheet now? Well, I have the ability to now come over here and say that I want to clone that sheet. So I'm going to pick on that and say clone or duplicate. It has the views listed here. Now, by default, like if you're copying the sheet, it's not allowed, or Revit doesn't allow you to have a view on more than one sheet. So what we can do is we can duplicate with detailing, or duplicate it as a dependent, or we can pick a different one. And I'm going to expand this so we can see this a little bit better. I'm going to pick this dependent 2. So remember, the original one was dependent 1. I'm swapping it with dependent 2. And that's where it's showing me similar views here with this check mark. And then the elevation view, I can choose a different elevation view. And then the schedule, because schedules are allowed on multiple sheets, it can duplicate that and just show the schedule, or I can choose a different schedule. So if I wanted to choose like the room type schedule, I can do that. Now when I say clone, what it's going to do is copy that sheet with all of its properties and its title block, but also those views, those 3 views that are on the sheet, and it's going to keep those aligned. So now when this is done here in a moment, I'm going to say, let's say done here. And I think the easiest thing is to go ahead and let's do a view tile. And we're going to do a ZA here. Oops. I've got probably a couple, yep, let's close this view. Tile. So now we have those are the 2 sheets I created, right? This has dependent 1 and this has dependent 2 on it. And so you can see that those are aligned. Now, just to show you how the align works, this is sheet Z7. I'm going to drag this over and up, whatever. And let's say this became out of alignment, and I wanted to make sure that it was aligned with this dependent view over here. So now under Z7, we'll say alignment. And so our alignment view is actually going to be Z8, and that's going to be our parking. And we're going to come over here and we're going to say we want to align this floor plan view is to the upper right here. So when I say align, it's going to then pop back into place and basically align based on the project characteristics or coordinate points. Now, if it's a schedule or if it's an elevation view, it's going to be aligned based on the upper left corner and its relationship to the title block. But if it's a plan view or reflected ceiling plan or something like that, it's going to use the project coordinates. So that was a quick overview of the sheet manager and the align tool, keeping those views in alignment. So they might have a 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. And then the clone, allowing you to copy that sheet information, but also the views on the sheet and be able to sort of manipulate and talk about and change the views as you're cloning them. So that was a whirlwind tool, and I spent quite a bit of time. That was the IdeateApps tool. So that was solution number 1 that contains those 8 robust tools for all Revit users. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about another product that we have called Ideate BIMLink. And Ideate BIMLink is a little bit different in the sense that it's sort of it is a productivity tool, but it's not geared toward all Revit users. The problem workflows that we're trying to solve here is the need to analyze, access, extract vast amounts of Revit data, and being able to sort of change things, maybe rename a whole series of families, or maybe export out all of the work sets that are used in a project and change those work sets. So how do you manage all that quality control and quality assurance, and how do you make these massive changes very easily? And our solution is Ideate BIMLink. It solves the Revit data management workflows. It's really our premier solution in our Ideate software suite of products, allowing you to extract vast amounts of data. So I think the easiest way is, again, to kind of just show how that works. I'm going to go over here and close a couple of these views, and we're going to open up this other project. And so here is my sort of sample project. I'm going to come over here to Ideate BIMLink, and much like you have schedules in Revit, we define these links. So these links are properties or definitions of properties that we're going to send out to Excel. So we ship with about 300 samples to get you started. So if I come over here and say, oh, I want to come down to, let's say, the doors as an example, the door types, and I say next, what it's doing is it's going to say, all right, I'm loading all of the properties that I think you want to manipulate when it comes to door types. Assembly code, fire rating, cost, model, manufacturer, and comments. And all these are editable once they get to Excel. Or if you didn't want to start out with a sample, you can read the information directly from a schedule. So here are all the schedules in this project. I can go to the room schedule, I can select next, and so now here are the properties of that room schedule. And so maybe for the purposes of Excel and like my data management, I don't care about the room finishes, so I'm going to remove those, but I do care about the department, and maybe I also want to look at information that's coming from a different source. So not just rooms, but you see I have a level information, coordinate information, phase information. So if I say, oh, level, I want the level name as an example. And so now that gives me that information. I select done, and now export. So export, we're going to come over here to our, let's come to the desktop and say room schedule, and we'll call it 1. And I export that information out. Once the export is complete, I can open up the file in Excel. So this is sort of what I call the raw data, right, in Excel, is that it allows me now to manipulate that information. So you see there's the room numbers. So getting started there, we can use the ReNumber tool, as you saw earlier, but in this case, maybe I just want to kind of keep the sequence. So I'm going to say 101, 102. I'm going to grab this and bring all the way down, and I'm just going to tell Excel to renumber it sequentially. So now it renumbers and it sort of replaces all those gaps. Then I'm going to come over here to the column K or somewhere over to the right, and I'm going to create a little formula. And the formula is going to be, let's say, lower and C2, column 2. So what that does is it says, okay, take the information in column C, right, which is catering kitchen, and make it lowercase. And not only do I want to take that formula and apply it to row C2, I would like to apply it to all the rows. So I can drag this down very easily, and it then takes that formula and it applies it to all the rows. Then I'm going to copy the information back over here, and we'll paste the values. So I paste the values back, so now I've replaced that with lowercase. Also over here, the great thing about Excel is I can do Control-C, and I can cut and paste. And maybe I want to type in, admin here. And again, we'll do Control-C. And these are things you can't do in a Revit schedule. I can't, do these sort of massive changes where I'm doing Control-C or Control-V. Also, because this is the list of rooms I have in the Revit project, automatically it's built what we call a pick list. And so I can choose that I want it to be a common, or I want it to be a utility room. And again, once I get utility, I can then go in here, say Control-V, copy that down. Now, the last thing I want to do here with this spreadsheet, I'm going to clear that utility, is come over here and I'm going to create a room, town hall space, and we're going to make it room number 148. And we'll take these two, and we'll say classroom and occupancy. Okay, so town hall space, there is no room in the Revit project called that. So I'm going to type in new. That's telling BIMLink to create that new information. So now I save, come back over here, and now I'm going to import from room schedule 1. So it's going to show me a preview of all the items that have changed. So up here in yellow, see all of where the room numbers, they started at 101, 102, 103, then there was a couple gaps, so now all of those got changed. All of the room names got changed to lowercase. You see where I added occupancy, where I changed some of the room types, and it'll tell me that, hey, there was a new unplaced room and that it changed these properties. So now I can import and close, and those changes, if I go to the first floor equipment and furniture plan, right, you can see as I zoom in that now all of these items, the concession, nature store, this multi-purpose space, if I drag this over here, is now lowercase. And in fact, if I tab on that, oops, not the, let's go get to what I'm looking for there. There's the room. All right, so if I've got the room, now I want to delete that room. And I want to place a new room here. And I don't want to place just a brand new room. I want to give it from my selection, right? So there's that town hall space that I created as part of that new room, right? So that was one of my selections. So when I now select town hall space, right, it has it as, in this case, this was room number 148. It was a classroom. It had the occupancy as the department. So all of the information I could fill out in Excel and then import that data into Revit to make things much easier. So just again, a couple examples of how you would maybe manipulate things in Excel and then import the data via Ideate BIMLink. So with BIMLink, I just showed you a couple examples, but I want you to know there's a lot of other workflows that Ideate BIMLink supports. Being able to edit parameters that are in schedules, which you saw me do, but you can also rename families and types. You can manage parameters that just don't appear in a Revit schedule. You can create new items. You saw I created a new room, but you can create new areas and schedule keys, masses, generic model elements, sheets, spaces, and revision sequences in addition to rooms. And then we give you access to the linked file support. If you want to do a report, for instance, you're not able to change items in the linked file, but you could report on all work sets that are used across your 5 Revit models. We give you both access to 2D and 3D model elements, so like lines and line styles, as well as furniture items or 3D elements like walls, and then design options and phase data as well. And you might say, well, what's one of the main purposes of working with Excel is that it is a product that is known by many people. You can copy and paste. You can even do spell check, even though we provide spell check with our new IdeateApps, but you can search and replace, and you can sort of add to the members of your overall project team. So you could have someone be working in Excel and have them doing a lot of the manipulations and changes, and then having the Revit user import that to update the information in Revit. Okay, so that's a quick whirlwind of Ideate BIMLink. Our next tool is called Ideate Explorer. And this is going to be fairly quick because you've actually seen pieces of Explorer in our Ideate apps with Quick Select. But what Ideate Explorer does, it builds upon that functionality. It allows you to really audit your project and understand a lot more about it. It is a model browser, just like Quick Select is, but it allows you to quickly find elements and the addition of searching on parameter values. So, Ideate Explorer solves these problems and so much more. So if I switch back here to Revit and now come over here to Ideate Software, I'm going to call up Explorer. And as I said, it's going to look fairly similar to Quick Select, except it has a lot more bells and whistles. Not only can you look at the entire project, right, but you can look at information based on, let's say, the category, the level, the phase, the room, and so forth, or even the work set. So if I wanted to quickly review items based on their user-created work set, and I can drill down to furniture, and I can see that, oh, there are 10 doors that were created on the furniture work set. That is not correct. So I want to now go over here and say, well, let's change those to work set 1 and apply. And now Explorer recategorizes those, and they're now under work set 1. You can also look at things by level. So for instance, if I clear this here and say, oh, there's a top of footing, there's a door that's on the top of footing, that is incorrect. That really should have been this door here. If I look over on that instance, and let's say come down here to the top of footing, that should be really the first floor. Let's apply and change that. And again, then it recategorizes that, and now it's on the first, this door now is on the first floor where it should be with all the other doors. So great way for me to quickly understand. And then also navigate. this is an additional tool that Explorer gives you, looking at legends and schedules and views. So if I go schedules, it's organizing the schedules for me. So I can say, oh, well, I just want to look at, for instance, the material, let's say schedules and quantities, and let's go to the room schedules, right? And I want to go to the room schedule that I used as that export, right? And I can actually just double click to open up that view. I can also come over here to the views that are on a sheet, scroll down here to the floor plan views, and let's say I want to look at this enlarged toilet plan. So I double click on that. It opens up that view, so you can see that. And now I can also right click and open up the sheet that contains that view. So Navigate gives me these great options to quickly go to a particular view or sheet. And then Explorer gives me the ability to explore all these great sort of the elements, if you will. And in fact, we've also given you, if I switch back over here to category, I've got this built-in filter called Ideate Audit. And so when I click on Ideate Audit, it's going to give me things that I should be looking at. For instance, like lines, detail lines. And if I come over here and say, oh, well, you know what is this line number 47? If I double click on this to open it up, it probably, or it definitely came from an AutoCAD import. And so that I can have all these line styles that don't match my standards. So now I'm going to pick on line number 51, 49, 48, 47, and this 7, 8, 9, whatever. And then we'll go over here and I'll just switch those to be, let's say, the A detail fine. So now I've just, within a couple seconds, I've switched 340 line styles to match my office standards. And I can do that with text. I can do that with many different element types. The last thing I want to do here with Explorer is show you the power of query. You can click on dimensions here, and query allows you not only to look at the dimension styles, but the properties of the dimensions. So if I want to come and say, well, I know that somewhere in my project there is a value override. And how would I be able to look at through thousands and thousands of dimensions without something like Explorer? I found one dimension in this entire project with over 1,300 dimensions. I can select that. It finds that dimension that has the override for me. I can now double click and zoom up on that, right? Where is it there? And say, okay, there's my 48-inch max. Let's go and say, nope, use the actual value. And so now it changes it to 3 foot 4 inches. So great tools allowing me to quickly identify and again, change that information and audit it and keep my projects lean and healthy. So, Ideate Explorer is all about auditing your BIM project. So again, it takes that base functionality of Quick Select, but it really builds on it. It builds all kinds of super auditing tools, allowing you to get a full in-depth view of your Revit model and understanding all the elements and maintaining your standards compliance and your quality control. And that query allows you to dig a little bit deeper and find unused annotation, select by structural usage, area schemes, in-place usage, revisions. There's all kinds of things that you can search on. The in-place family is really important too. You can search for all of your families that are in place because they take up a lot more space in the file or in the project. And those can really slow the project down, and they may not be necessary. For instance, maybe you can use a loaded component family as opposed to an in-place family. Okay, we're at the almost the top of the hour here, and I've got one last solution, which is called Ideate Sticky. And the problem workflow that we're trying to solve here is integrating Excel data, but in a different way than what we saw with Ideate BIMLink. Ideate BIMLink was all about the data. Hopefully I showed you an example of how you could take the Revit data, send it out to Excel, manipulate it, and then import it back into Revit. That's key for BIMLink, is that data management. But there are times where you have, let's say, some manufacturing data or some code information in Excel, and you just want to display it in Revit. It's not about the data. It's sort of what we call the non-BIM data. You want to show it visually in a way that's lightweight in your Revit project. And that solution is Ideate Sticky. It incorporates Excel spreadsheets into your Revit project with ease and fidelity. So if I switch back over here to Revit again, let's close my Explorer here. And let's go to my view. We're going to select on a new sheet. And we're going to say, here's a new sheet. And we're going to just come over here to our Ideate Software, Sticky. And just like I'm inserting a CAD file or inserting another file, I would say create. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my Sticky samples. And I've got a multi-page revision fixed length. And I can choose multiple areas here, but I'm just going to go ahead and say OK. And that now links or imports that data on this Revit sheet. So now I can come over here, modify, and maybe move that over. Now, if I do another insert, right? So now we'll create, and this time I'm going to come over here to my lighting fixtures. And there's my lighting spec. And let's choose, if there are multiple worksheets, I want to choose my Ideate. I could say OK. Close that. And now there's the Ideate. And you say, well, what exactly is this? Well, if I double click, it is a Revit schedule. It's a very lightweight. We're using the Revit header, but we're maintaining that link. So if I come back over here, you see all my sticky samples here. Let's go to my multi-page, or I'm not multi-page, my lighting spec. Let's go to Ideate, and let's make a change to it. So what I'm going to do is say Philips Ideate for Arizona, just there. And we're also going to make, we only care about maybe these first two items. So I'm going to make this a region, call it small. So I'm going to save this. And then coming back over here to Revit, as soon as I call up Sticky, it knows that that's out of date. So what I want to do is I say, I want to first maybe update from, change it from, I've got Philips Ideate, instead of the print area, I'm going to say small, and say OK. And now I've got Philips Ideate for Arizona, and it's only got the two lighting fixtures as opposed to the full spectrum. So again, it's a great way for me to integrate and link that data together. So now let's go back over here to my, oops, wrong one there. Sorry about that. And so again, just to reiterate, is Sticky manages that non-BIM information. And it allows you to incorporate and directly collaborate with Excel users. So in conclusion here, all of the Ideate software solutions that you saw today, I started with Ideate Apps, spent quite a bit of time on that because there were 8 tools or 8 solutions embedded in that. And then I talked about Ideate BIMLink, Ideate Explorer, and Ideate Sticky. All of those solutions are available as both a network and a standalone. We have extensive help included with all of those, and we're really laser focused on Revit data management needs. And all of our solutions are available. If you go to www.ideatesoftware.com, you can download a 2-week or 14-day trial. The only caveat there is our Ideate BIMLink, which is that data extraction. We limit the number of extracted rows to Excel to 25. Otherwise, all 4 that you saw today are full version of our products for that 14-day period. And so with that, let me go to the next slide here. I can't seem to advance. Okay. Go. There we go. Sorry about that. So I want to thank you very much. I think I was like 1 minute over, but I appreciate your time and attention today. All the information can be found and is available at cadsoftconsulting.com or cadsoft-consult.com. And if you have any particular questions, I see that there's a few in the question window that I'll answer after Mary kind of wraps up here.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. And I'm just amazed at how much productivity enhancements you can have with these products. And really encourage all of you to download the trials. It's a good way to get used to what the products are capable of. If you have any questions, again, you reach out directly to Richard, or you can certainly send me an email at info@catsoft-consult.com. I will also be following up and sending all of you a copy of the link to the recording following this webinar so that you can share it with others in your organization. So with that, if Richard, you can do anything more, I think we are done for the day. And I, again, thank everybody for joining us, and watch for that follow-up email with a copy of the link to the recording. And thanks again.
Yeah, I did, Mary. I just have one question I wanted to answer. Ross had asked, do the Ideate software add-ons to Revit increase the CPU demands that may cause slowdown in the machine processing? And our CPU demands are no more than they would be with normal Revit. So we're really not adding anything. So whatever the minimum specifications for Revit, that version of Revit that you're running, would be the same for our Ideate software solutions. But that's a really good question, Ross. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Richard.
All right, I appreciate it.